Today, our narrative opens with Rachel, after a semester of nearsightedness-inducing labor for what came out to be surprisingly mediocre grades, attempting to catch her flight back to Canada at 8:20 p.m. In preparation for said event, Rachel set out to leave 2 hours early as Google Maps had informed her that the entire trip would take around an hour, leaving a good hour for her to get through security. However, due to a combination of Rachel's unforeseeably poor use of time, Los Angeles traffic, and the Google Maps misguidance leading Rachel towards the opposite direction, she barged into the airport at 8:15 p.m., where the flight was scheduled to take off in 5 minutes. Frightened at the prospect of losing her flight money, Rachel came up to the check-in counter and asked what she could do at the moment. Fortunately, she was met with the godsend of a ticketing agent who rebooked her flight at no additional charge, truly upholding Air Canada and thus all Canadians' generous and supportive reputation. The next flight, however, was at 7 a.m. and check-in was not available until 4 a.m. This meant that Rachel was to either transit back and spend $6 in addition to the money she already spent coming to the airport, or that she could stay at the airport overnight, albeit outside of security. As a desperate attempt to stay on brand with her image of a cheapskate, Rachel chose the latter. She then proceeded to wander aimlessly around terminals 5 to 7 for an hour as various types of people rushed by. However, the aimless wandering quickly became tedious and Rachel's millennial dopamine-hijacked brain was seeking constant stimulation. A conversation with her newly found animal companion proved to be too risky of a method to spend the time, but it did give her the idea to hunt for ghosts when the clock strikes 3. Unfortunately, her sudden ambition for ghost hunting was never fulfilled due to a serious case of "there's always people around"-itis. Instead, Rachel sat right next to Air Canada's check-in reception, determined to stay awake until 4 a.m. as to avoid theft and ensure that she actually does get on the flight this time. This proved difficult as she, 1, has to combat potential ghosts, creatures, airport luggage thieves, and her own fatigue, but also 2nd, needs to think of new ways to entertain herself. Luckily, this was easily achieved with the help of Rachel's ignorance to her surroundings and the LAX Wi-Fi. Time passed by, however, and the Wi-Fi session expired. Inspired by her YouTube persona as an aesthetic connoisseur, Rachel decided to revisit the vaporwave tracks she actively downloaded to use in her videos as an unironically avid fan of the genre. Frustrated at her inability to be productive and provide entertaining ghost hunting related content, Rachel decided to make a vaporwave track. However, this only furthered her feeling of unproductiveness because the only thing she had to do to make the vaporwave track was slow it down 40%. Aesthetic relief aside, the physical strain had finally gotten to Rachel when she felt jolting pain in her eyeballs. Already wary of her eye health after multiple all-nighters studying for classes from which she obtained mediocre grades, she decided to sleep after all. Good news, good news! Our protagonist woke up in time and made it through security. With 2 hours to spare, she began to wander again, but it feels different this time around. after Rachel's night of physical and psychological struggle at the airport. Even the sun seems to celebrate her endurance, pulling a Wes Anderson-like tint over everything in sight. A fittingly peaceful end to a chaotic story.